People frequently ask me my opinion on which commander unique items, or respect 10 items, whatever you want to call them, which ones are worth investing in. So I figured it was time to make a series of videos. So if you want to know my opinion on which tier 1 good side commander R10 items are worth it, stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. For the sake of time in this video, I'm just going to talk about the respect items that I think are worth investing in. So if I don't talk about one of these commanders' respect items, that means, in my opinion, it is not worth it. Starting with a somewhat controversial one, in my opinion, I'm going to talk about Dwalin, who gets the twin axes. I say this is somewhat controversial, at least for me, because I think that the Axe of Khazad-dûm with Cleave is actually better than the twin axes. It has a higher amount of might, quite significantly higher might actually, and the ability on it, in my opinion, is better than Battle Dance, as it will be doing, it has a 50% chance to proc if it's the Axe of Khazad-dûm. This is only a 20% chance to proc, so that's one major difference there. However, Dwalin is an extremely solid hero. He's very versatile. I've talked about him in at least one guide. I probably should do an updated Dwalin guide if I haven't done one recently, because this guy is just a fantastic commander, especially for a T1. The reason that I do think that this is worth mentioning is it's not always going to be easy to have an Axe of Khazad-dûm, or Khazad-dûm, however you say it, with the correct trait or ability on it. So if you don't have access to one of those, this could be a perfectly viable alternative for a solid weapon for your Dwalin. Otherwise, you can just stick with a purple axe that has Flay on it, the battle axe with Flay. I do want to point out, I should have mentioned this probably at the very beginning of the video, that these items, you cannot break them down. So if you invest in one of these unique items, as it currently stands right now, you can never get back your items that you've invested in them. It's not like any other gear where once you break it, you get worn out versions of those items back. In these cases, it is a permanent investment, so do keep that in mind when you're picking which commander you want to invest in. Next up, we're going to talk about Faramir. I think this guy has an absolutely phenomenal unique item, the Ranger's Cape. And the reason I think it's so great is because of the Ithilien ambush ability. For the first 2 rounds, Faramir and allied ranged units gain initiative, which means they get to act first in those rounds of combat, provided there's no other source of initiative in play, like Convener. And they gain bonus damage. This starts at 10%, goes up to 20, 30, 40, 50, goes up to a 60% damage bonus if you fully refine this, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's up there with some of the best damage bonuses in the game. And if you combine that with the guide skill, which you absolutely should, this will be a 45% damage bonus, plus the 60% is a whopping 105% increased range damage and stun immunity for the first 2 rounds of combat, which is, it's just crazy. Plus you get the initiative as well. So if you do pick up the Ranger's Cape on Faramir, I think this goes a long way into making him a respectable commander again. I don't think that I would run this with, or run Faramir without the Ranger's Cape, and you definitely want to run 2 to 3 ranged units in his army to take advantage of that. As I've talked about in, I think, both my Gil-galad video and my updated Faramir guide, I think that with his unique item, the right army, and particularly the Foresight skill, he can actually do quite well in countering Gil-galad, Gandalf the Great, and probably even Undying, since Undying has a pretty nasty evasion as well. And the absolute best tier 1 good faction unique item, in my opinion, is none other than Haldir. I've made at least 2 videos on this guy already, so I'm not going to waste any time by talking about his full army setup and skills. Go check out those videos if you haven't seen them and are interested in them. So this is a little bit tricky. The way they worded this is actually quite poor. So Warden of the Forest says, elf units gain initiative and boosted defense when battling on woodlands. And the reason I say this is a bit tricky is the way it's worded. You would think, and I thought this too, I think probably everybody thought this when the unique items first came out, that you have to be battling on woodlands in order for all of this to activate, which when you read it like that, it's not all that exciting because you can't always guarantee that you're going to be fighting on woodlands. However, the way this really should be worded is actually elf units gain initiative, period. Elf units gain defense plus blah de blah when battling on woodlands. The way this item actually works is that all of your elf units always have initiative no matter what tile you're fighting on. It doesn't have to be on woodland for the initiative portion. It's just the defense portion that applies on wood tiles, when really what you care about is the fact that with this one item, you can give your army initiative every single time, all the time, every round of combat, which is insane. And you don't really care that it only applies to elven units, because with Haldir's skill tree, you're going to be wanting to run at least 2 elven units, potentially 3 elven units, depending on if you have access to things like Noldor Longshots or March Wardens, because this guy gives an absolute phenomenal amount of damage and defense to ranged units. And if you happen to have access to Eagles, he can actually pump out like 60 or 70,000 healing just on those Eagles as well. Super strong commander with an absolutely phenomenal respect item. The reason that I think Haldir and Faramir's respect items are better, if we go back to Faramir and take a look, is these items provide an effect that you can't necessarily get elsewhere, at least not in this same slot. There are accessories that have a chance to provide initiative, but they don't provide initiative and damage boost. Or in the case of Haldir, they don't provide initiative and potentially extra defense if you're fighting on woodlands. And I mean, the main one I can think of is really Fiddle of the Eldest. Let's see if I have one of those laying around. I don't think I do. I used to have a Fiddle of the Eldest with Blitz, and that's only the first 4 rounds of combat. Yeah, I don't have one. Whereas with Haldir's initiative, like I said, that's the entire combat. I do want to throw a quick shout out to Eowyn's respect item, just because Eowyn is another phenomenal commander that can really take advantage of going to R10 and even higher as far as her skill tree goes. This accessory has a solid amount of might for an accessory slot. That is one selling point of it, in my opinion. And Shield Maiden's cover is actually pretty good in the right situations. This provides your melee units, which you're always going to be running melee units on Eowyn anyway. It reduces the range damage that they receive in early rounds of combat, particularly applicable when you're fighting against other good factions, as Gil-galad, Gandalf the Grey, they can both run 2 ranged unit compositions. Faramir, Haldir can run ranged unit compositions. There tend to be quite a lot of ranged units present in good armies, and if you can pick your battles and snipe commanders like Gandalf and Gil-galad, who are the strongest in the early rounds of combat, this accessory can provide another benefit that you can't really get anywhere else, and that's a pretty substantial amount of mitigation against the range damage that those commanders will be pumping out. Other than that, Ori actually has a pretty good respect item, except he just doesn't have the skill tree to back it up. If you kind of want to meme with him, I think you could probably make it work to some extent, because Axe Throwers having a chance to gain max damage is pretty amazing. However, he just doesn't have the skill tree to back it up, in my opinion. I just would never take Ori to respect 10 plus when I could use those exact same respect items to take Dwalin to respect 10 plus. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it and learned something useful. Catch you in the next one. Phoenix, over and out.